Good evening, beautiful family. Sad circumstances, but I'm nonetheless very honored to be able to share a few thoughts and memories about my big brother James. You'll see me looking off to the side because I wrote down on the screen, my other monitor, what I wanted to say. I didn't want to be all over the place. Not this time. Do you notice I called him James? I think I was the only one who called him that, as far as I know. And I think he liked it too. There were only a few of us siblings who had the privilege of knowing our fathers. That would be the older siblings and Carol. I didn't even know my father was alive until I was about maybe 9 or 10. And I never missed him because I already had a huge father figure in my life. My big brother was all any child could ever want or need in a dad. Many times as I was growing up, I remember thinking, he's my brother, not my dad, so he's not the boss of me. I was temporarily delusional because he was indeed the boss of me. And the boss of our entire family right alongside my mom. And if I dared voice my thoughts, I knew I would have been knocked upside the head by both of them. He and my mom taking turns. He provided structure and boundaries during my youth. My mom was always really busy because we had a family business that had to keep going because that's how she provided for us. But in addition to that, Jaime and Nick helped her as well. But it was tough, money-wise. So James would check on me during the week, and he would ask my mom if I was keeping up with my homework. And if she didn't report anything negative, he was quick to reward when he came over to visit on Sunday. I sought his approval and shined when I got it. And when I didn't, I hid. In our room, at my friend's house, anywhere, to avoid seeing and hearing his displeasure. He was my mom's fiercest weapon when it came to wanting me to obey her. All she would have to say is, "Le voy a decir a Jaime." And that was enough to start me crying and running to do whatever she wanted me to do. He had earned my respect and my love because I know that he would always make sure that we were okay. He didn't say much, he didn't need to, so when he spoke, I listened intently, as most of us did. He took an interest in every single one of us, and everything any of us did. He made it a point to speak to my mom in private, even if it was just for a little bit, every time that he came to visit. And I remember as a child looking off to where they were at, speaking privately, and taking great comfort because no matter the situation or issue that my mom or we would be facing at the time, or what she had confided in him at the time, he would make it bearable. I knew that he would make it okay. Our home was a tumultuous home at times, quite a bit of the times, to be frank. And when he visited, he brought peace and security. That's what he represented to me in the home of my youth. I could go on forever, or almost as forever, with so many memories, but allow me to move on to share my most memorable times with him, which some of you, or most of you, or none of you might even be aware of. He bought me my first bike. I think I may have been about 7 years old. And I recall him pulling up in his truck. I think it was a red truck. He whistled his famous whistle for me to come out and let everyone know that he had arrived, which was cause for much happiness. My mom, Carol, and I waited each Sunday for him and for everyone else to arrive for Sunday dinner. That's a family tradition, at least it used to be. And we'd all get excited when he would pull up. This time he called me out to him. So I ran and he asked me to climb in the back of the truck. I thought he was taking me somewhere, and back then we all rode in the back of the truck. But this time he didn't move to drive. So I sat and waited for his instructions and until he asked me to pull the tarp off, and there was a brand new bike underneath. I think it was pink. I didn't dare believe that it was for me. So I stayed quiet until he took it down and asked me to get on it to measure the seat height. He never told me it was mine. He just smiled at me and told me to stay on the sidewalk and walked away. As he walked away to greet my mom, because she was waiting for him at the door, smiling. A man of few words, indeed. My second memory was a few years later. I must have been about 9 maybe. We were driving somewhere and I was sitting in the middle right next to him. Back then the cars that he would buy had like this bench seat where there were 3 people that would fit, and I knew that when we drove together that I was supposed to sit right next to him. But that was so that he could keep his hand on my knee, squeezing, telling me, "Te duele? He he he." Hey. Just messing around the way he always did. But that was one thing that he did, and that's why he wanted me near him. And this time it was raining, and I remember like it was yesterday, the sound of the wipers swishing away. And as we drove under a bridge, the wipers made this ugly, loud, squeaky sound. And often he would ask me questions just to get me thinking. And this time he asked me, "Why did the sound change?" I remember thinking about his question, not wanting to give a wrong answer. And then I replied, "Because it doesn't rain under the bridges." He smiled so broadly, showing all his big teeth, and said, "You're a smart girl. I will have to think of harder questions for you next time." These memories are what most people would expect to hear between a father and his child. Teaching memories is what they are. Well, that's the type of relationship that we had. He knew I was his sister, but he always treated me like a daughter. And for me, he was my dad, too. He worked hard all his life so we could, as a family, get ahead and become what we are now. Between the older siblings and my mom, they were able to buy their first home in East LA. And it was like the Jeffersons. We as a united family moved on up and seldom looked back. He bought me my first doll, at least the first one that I can remember. Her name was Perla. And he said she was ugly because she needed love. And as he handed her to me, he said, "I better take real good care of her." I'll never forget that because she was ugly. And to date, I'm still looking for a Perla doll. I don't know what happened to her. But if I find her, I'm sure it's going to cost a fortune. But I still want it. So if you guys see one, let me know. He bought my mom cars, several cars, so she could drive. But actually, it was so I could drive. Because she didn't want to learn. Despite being put through driver's training several times that everybody took turns paying for, mostly him, she would say, "Pues para eso te tengo a ti." It didn't matter if I was only 12 years old. Mom. He helped me buy my first home on my own after my divorce. He always wanted me to own and not to rent. Many times he would check in on me via my big sister. I knew that if she was calling and asking me something, it was because he most likely wanted to know. And if I needed anything, he would be the first to say, "I'll give this much," which was usually the greater portion. He bought my son Gilbert his first car because he knew that as a single mom, I couldn't afford it. He took my son Daniel in when he was having trouble in high school. He inquired regularly after my son Andrew went to war to see how I was doing, always ready to help in any way that I needed. He took me to San Diego when I needed surgery, and he was here when I had knee surgery, asking Lupe to cook and bring us something to eat because I couldn't get up. He provided for our brother Bata's kids when he passed. He often sought Diane, Alice, and Bata Jr., that we know as Tata. He would pick them up and brought them to our home to visit, so they stayed connected to the root of the family for as long as possible. He became a dad to 5 kids when he married Margaret, and he loved and cared for them too. He treated them as his own and loved and helped them, even when they reached adulthood and they had long since been divorced. He and his then wife, Margaret, took in this little girl when she needed a family and made her his own. Jeanette became one of us and always will be. He was always there for us, all of us, always. I pray that he instilled his values in his sons, so they too can do as he did and take care of and watch out for their entire clan, just like their dad did. My siblings and I went to see him a week before he passed, and after they had left, I was with him for a few minutes, alone, just Lupe and I, and then Keta walked in, because I arrived late. And we talked a little bit. He didn't say very much, but I remember what his response was. I asked him, I said, if you were to go to your rest, I want you to do something for me. If you see my mom, our mom, before I do, kiss her for me and save me a place right next to you guys. And he looked at me and then he looked down and he said, I sure will. To wind up my part, please allow me to share this Bible verse, which you may not have heard worded like this. It's from the Message Bible, which reads a little different, and I tend to prefer it because it has a little more modern vocabulary. And this is from John 5:28. It reads, Don't act so surprised at all this. The time is coming when every dead and buried will hear his voice. Those who have lived the right way will walk out into a resurrection life. Those who have lived the wrong way into a resurrection judgment. He passed knowing and loving our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank God. So I know, as do all believers, that I'll see him again when the time comes. May we all draw closer to God so we can have a big family reunion in heaven when the time comes. Because it's the only way that is ever going to happen. Until then, sleep peacefully, big brother. Thank you for being. My brother and dad come. P.S. For those of you who believe his spirit or ghost will be close to you, read your Bibles, please. He's sleeping until Christ calls him home, as all are who pass before him, and as we will be too if we love and accept Christ. God bless you all, my beautiful family.